that will then be guiding the discussion on the Q&A session. And I would like also to thank colleagues from the Department of Ayush, Government of India, and from the Permanent Mission of India based in Geneva, who are also here joining the session as observers and members of the faculty. So before starting the session, allow me to give some housekeeping notes. So we expect that this session will take 1.5 hours. And according to the discussion, we might extend for a few minutes. And this event is being live webcast by Satsang Foundation on YouTube and Facebook. We have put the links in the chat box and on the slide displayed. We will be using the chat functions to take the audience questions. And since the time for the audience questions is rather limited, we may not be able to address all the questions that you have during this session. So we look to address some of the questions during the session on the chat. And for pending ones, we're happy to respond via email if you leave your email along with the questions that you will have. So this session will be recorded. And by joining this session, you are consenting to the proceedings being recorded and used by WHO. We will also have a live transcription throughout the meeting, which participants of the Zoom session can view during the meeting. So now turning to the topics of this very important event. As you know, WHO defines in its constitution, defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. The definition looks at health beyond the biomedical model. It reflects a comprehensive understanding and a holistic approach of health, influenced by biological, social, and environmental determinants. The Department of Health Promotion at headquarters, who is responsible for shaping the organization's strategies and activities for promoting physical activity and well-being. To this end, the department has developed a global plan of action on physical activity for 2018 up to 2030. And the WHO active tool to support member states' uptake and promote physical activity is underway, and it's also, the department is also planning to hold the 10th Global Conference on Health Promotion under the overall theme of well-being. As you can see, yoga as a tool for physical activity and promoting well-being is central to the work that the department is doing. So what is yoga? Yoga is an ancient Indian practice which has become hugely popular during the last decades as a physical activity routine across the different age groups, but especially among adolescents. The practice has led to thousands of yoga training centers and hundreds of diligent practitioners who are looking to progress in their practice. While many groups have resorted to yoga because of the excellent and fast results it produces on the body, many also realize the benefit of mental health and mental well-being that it produces. We have organized this session as a Q&A session between 3M and renowned guru and yoga teacher and practitioners from India, and Dr. Ruediger Krech, the director of the Department of Health Promotion.
This is better.
The key objectives of the conversation are to understand better the value of yoga as a tool for well-being and physical activity, to develop a better understanding on using yoga, and towards developing active societies, and to explore opportunities to enhance this area of work as part of WHO's work. We are hopeful that the audience will find this session useful for your personal well-being, and we hope that it will trigger more thinking on what can be done by WHO to further support strategies to make use of these interesting new tools and areas of work for the collective benefits. So before we introduced the speaker and we've moved toward the Q&A, may I first thank the Ministry of Ayush of the Government of India for graciously providing a recorded message from Dr. Rajesh Kotecha, the Secretary of the Department of Ayush, as an opening message on this occasion, highlighting their vision, aspirations, on their collaboration of work with WHO. Let me just remind you what the meaning of Ayush means. Ayush is really used as, it's really about, it's the acronym for Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, and Siddham, and H for homeopathy. So without due delay, I would like to kindly ask my colleagues to display the video. Thank you.
Namaste, officers from WHO, distinguished guests, teachers, yoga teachers, expert participants, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings from India to all of you at this virtual event on the theme, Yoga, a tool for physical activity and well-being. On behalf of Ministry of Ayush, Government of India, I extend my sincere appreciation for Department of Health Promotion, WHO Headquarters, Geneva, for organizing this virtual event on yoga. I am sure that this event would be beneficial for the participants to achieve their wellness in the current pandemic. From ancient times, India has contributed greatly in achieving the goal of health and well-being through traditional medicines like Ayurveda and yoga. As you are aware that on December 11, 2014, the United Nations General Assembly declared June 21st as the International Day of Yoga. The declaration came at the behest of the Honorable Indian Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi, and rightly he said, yoga is not just about exercise. It is a way to discover the sense of oneness with yourself, the world, and the nature. I am happy to say that on the occasion of 7th International Day of Yoga, that was 21st June of 2021, Honorable Prime Minister of India, Sri Narendra Modi ji, launched WHO AIM Yoga application. This application was jointly developed by the digital vertical of WHO and Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga, Ministry of Ayush, Government of India. This app will provide many videos of yoga training and practice based on common yoga protocol in many languages, and will help in spreading yoga world over and will contribute to the efforts of One World, One Health. Yoga truly belongs to the world. It was in the environs of the ancient India that the secret of harmonious way of living in sync with nature, focusing on balance and alignment of body and mind, was painstakingly discovered by sages and scholars after long years of inquiry, practice, and penance. In context of COVID-19 pandemic, Ministry of Ayush has taken many initiatives for the prevention of disease, mitigation of disease by enhancing immunity and to develop safe and effective medicines and interventions for COVID-19 through Ayurveda, Yoga, and other Ayush systems of healthcare. Ministry of Ayush has recommended the self-care guidelines for preventive health measures and immunity promotion with special reference to respiratory health. These are supported by literatures and scientific publications. The advisory issued by the Ministry of Ayush was translated in several foreign languages, including all UN languages. Yoga has certainly played a notable role during COVID-19 pandemic. I am delighted to inform that Ayurveda and Yoga interventions have been integrated in the National Clinical Management Protocol for COVID-19 in India. Further, I am happy to inform that the Ministry of Ayush, Government of India, has established a Yoga Certification Board in 2018 for certification of yoga professionals and accreditation of yoga institutions with the vision to enable people across the globe to lead a healthy lifestyle and to make yoga a way of holistic living by ensuring access to quality yoga trainers. As of now, 66 national and international institutions have been accredited and thousands of yoga professionals have been certified around the globe in a very short span of time since inception of YCB in 2018. The surest way to bounce back to health and elevating our well-being is by practicing yoga in our daily lives. This will not only bring peace and harmony in our lives, but also improve our immunity and lessen the burden on our healthcare systems. I'm sure that daily yoga practice will help to improve their performance and also become better human beings. I pray for the power of yoga to benefit each one of us and propel us further in our journey of self-discovery and collective fulfillment. I also compliment and congratulate Reverend Sri M for his guidance, his continuous mentoring in the area of yoga across the globe. I am aware that he is the main faculty and resource person for this event, and I'm grateful for his time and his commitment to the science of yoga. I once again extend a warm welcome to all of you. I'm sure that we will achieve our missions to make a healthy society by using methods, value and ethics of yoga. Namaskar once again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You heard a strong message from Dr. Ruediger Krech, Secretary of Ministry of Ayush from the Government of India. And again, we are very grateful to Ayush Secretary, Dr. Krech, for outlining the department's work in the area of yoga. And we look forward to further opportunities for more collaboration. So I have the great pleasure and honor to introduce today's speakers. Our speakers for this session are Sri M and Dr. Ruediger Krech. Sri M was born in Kerala, India, and is a spiritual teacher, a guru, author, educationalist, and global speaker. Sri M established the Satsang Foundation 20 years ago, and his mission has resulted in several initiatives in the areas of education, community health, environment, and the oneness of humanity. The Satsang Foundation runs a number of regular training courses in yoga for teachers and practitioners, some of which are recognized and accredited by the Ministry of Ayush. His memoir, Apprenticed to Himalayan Master, a yogi autobiography, published in 2011, became one of the instant bestseller. And the journey continues, published in 2017, it has also been quite successful. He is the author of various different books on philosophy of yoga and Indian mysticism. In 2020, he was awarded one of India's high civilian honors called the Padma Bhushan by the government of India for his distinguished services of a high order. His recent book on yoga, titled Yoga Also for the Godless, is a step-by-step guide to the theory and practice of yoga for those who seek to know it better, and also for the young and the millennium, you may be stepping out for the first time. Our second speaker will be Dr. Ruediger Krech. Dr. Krech is the director of the Department of Health Promotion at WHO headquarters since 2019. He's head of WHO's work on risk factors such as tobacco consumption, tobacco product use, and harmful use of alcohol. He's also responsible for work on health promoting settings and program for physical activity. Dr. Krech was the director of the Universal Health Coverage and played a key role in placing the issue on the global health agenda. From 2009 to 2014, Dr. Krech was a director of the Social Determinants of Health and Equity and was responsible, among others, for organizing the World Conference on the topic. Dr. Krech studied educational science on human medicine and public health, and he was awarded a doctorate in public health at the University of Bielefeld. I would like to invite now Dr. Krech and 3M to proceed on their conversation. Dr. Krech, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Faten, for this kind introduction. And firstly, a warm welcome and heartily felt greeting from me to Shri M, who has joined us virtually from Madanapalle in Andhra Pradesh in India. Let me start by thanking Shri M and his foundation, the Satsang Foundation, for engaging with WHO in this relevant and timely conversation, which I'm confident will throw light on how yoga can be a tool for building active societies. I also acknowledge the message from the Ministry of Ayush, the Government of India, and thank them once again for their leadership, vision, and support. Our member states have a great role in shaping WHO's work and providing the impetus to shape many needed interventions by WHO at a global level. Faten has made a good background introduction of the objectives of this meeting. From my end, I would like to add a couple of points on your work. Our department in WHO is spearheading a number of initiatives, such as the work on tobacco and alcohol control, the global action plan on physical activity, the great work we're doing on healthy cities, such as the work on governance, on urban governance and health promotion, our work on well-being, the health in all policies work, the global work on public health law and health taxes. I just now need to see where the camera is in this. This is the camera? Perfect. Thank you so much. Because we are struggling a bit, colleagues, with the technology here, but now I think it's been sorted. Thank you so much. While many of us are familiar with yoga, there are a large number of questions around this practice which could be clarified. The traditional methods espoused by yoga rely on a few old texts and predominantly orally passed on knowledge systems. As a technical agency under the UN umbrella, WHO has a normative role. We have a well-structured evidence synthesis and guideline development process which ensures good quality, validity, and precision of research and conformity to systems. There is an increasing understanding of yoga's significance in physical activity and well-being at the same time. So there is quite a balance between enhanced well-being, but at the same time that yoga actually contributes also to physical activity levels. Just to say that in June 2021, WHO launched the M-Yoga app in partnership with Ayush, and currently the M-Yoga app is used by a couple of 10,000 users and is one of the well-liked apps by WHO colleagues such as myself. We are also strengthening our work on traditional medicine, which is a very exciting development for the fans of yoga because it definitely points to more opportunities for better access to the science of yoga. With these background points on WHO's work introduced to the audience, I would like to proceed with my questions to you, Shri M.
Thank you.
To set the scene, we could start with the background and history of yoga as a practice. Can you please, Shri M, give a brief introduction on the origins of yoga in India and its history? We all know that it is an ancient science, but how old is it and how has it been an influencer through the centuries? What is its relevance and in modern age? And as yoga has entered the modern age, has there been perhaps any changes to see compared with older times? How do you view the evolution of yoga as a practice for the human body and mind? Over to you, Shri M. So delighted to have you on board.
Thank you, Dr. Ruediger. Namaskar to you. Greetings from India. I won't waste much time in that, but I must quickly thank Dr. Jamuna to have started this, initiated this, and Ms.
Shri M,
Jacqueline.
can you hear us?
I can hear
cannot
you.
hear you.
He says he can't hear me.
It seems you're muted. Is that possible?
Am I muted?
I think now we're getting to hear you, Shri M.
Yes. So
thank you so much.
I'm sorry about it, but thank you, Dr. Ruediger, and also a little bit of time for thanking Dr. Jamuna and Miss Jacqueline Lashley, and also.
And now they want us to.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes, we can hear you very well, Shri M.
And also Ben Abdulaziz Fatain, who was looking after the program just now, who started the whole thing. Thank you very much. Now, to your question, history of yoga as a practice. Now, yoga is a very ancient science. Many people associate yoga only with the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is a standard text, of course, on yoga. But if you go backwards, much before that, the Upanishads, which perhaps at the conservative estimate are 1,000 years old, maybe, you will see the mention of the practices of yoga in the principal Upanishads in little bit rudimentary, but the basis of yoga, which is to go into the mind and find out the essence of your energy within. This has been mentioned even in some of the ancient principal Upanishads. But apart from that, there is a whole body of literature called the Yoga Upanishads, the Upanishads on yoga, which are also very old. They didn't come later, they are from Yajurveda and so on, which is the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, ancient sources. So the Yoga Upanishads also deal with yoga. Now, everybody knows about the Bhagavad Gita. Most people know about the Bhagavad Gita. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, at the end of each chapter, it is relevant here. I'm not looking at it as a religious text. I'm looking at it as a textbook on the practice of yoga. Why? Because the 18 chapters of the Gita, I always say it's like a big golf course. There are 18 holes. The 18 chapters of the Gita, each chapter is called a yoga. So it's not just physical. Every chapter is yoga. And at the end of each chapter, if I may quote in Sanskrit just a little bit briefly, it says, Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre, which means this is the teaching of the Upanishads, which is very ancient, and which teach you the knowledge of the supreme reality or consciousness, supreme consciousness, and also Yoga Shastre, which means the science of yoga by which you can understand the mysteries of what has been taught in the Upanishad. So you see how ancient it is. Well, you're right. It was confined basically in those days to oral transmission, but later on, texts have been written down and recorded much later. So therefore, we have the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is considered to be a textbook by most yogis, practitioners. Then we have the Hatha Yoga Pradipika of Swatma Rama, which is a comprehensive textbook on the practice of yoga, which Patanjali explains as Ashtanga Yoga, which means 8 angas of yoga. But some of the angas or the branches Anga means a branch or a division of yoga. So 8 divisions, out of which Patanjali does not go into detail explaining the 8 limbs in the Yoga Sutras. However, if you go to textbooks like the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, you can find complete expansion of the aphorisms of Patanjali. Patanjali only gives aphorisms which need a commentary, like Yama, Niyama, which means rules and regulations, asana, the practices. Nowadays yoga has become famous mostly because of the asanas. You go to even Hollywood, there are lots of yoga teachers teaching yoga out there. So why is it taught? Not only for perfect health, I would say also to keep your figure. I know some of the Hollywood people who practice yoga to keep an hourglass figure intact. I mean, this is not the aim of yoga, of course. The aim of yoga is physical health, mind health, and from mind health to explore into that which is beyond the ordinary mind, which means beyond the boundaries of ordinary thought. I mean, this is the whole gamut. I mean, if you look at it, I would say this is yoga. And has it changed over the years? Yes. One, as you said, from traditional teachings of yoga which came orally, it has now come down to textbooks which have been translated also from Sanskrit, yes. And the practice of yoga has been popularized, but I would say only the asanas and pranayam have been popularized. There are many other aspects of yoga which still need to be studied with great advantage to humanity at large. So let me let me complete this answer by saying that we should take yoga out of the religious context and put it in the context of a scientific research into how to keep the body healthy and how to therefore from there a healthy body and a healthy mind, and then how to go beyond the boundaries of the ordinary conditioned mind. I think yoga by itself, I wrote my latest book is called Yoga Also for the Godless. I don't say for the godless, I said also for the godless, which means even if you are not religiously inclined in any way, you can still practice yoga and enjoy the benefits and the fruits of the practice. However, I need to add that I cannot deny that this great science, I call it science, some people call it art, has its origin in India. I can't deny that, of course. But I think I have kind of answered much of the points in your first question, Dr. Ruediger, or I can't hear Dr. Ruediger now. I think he's mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Much better. And I apologize. We really have a little bit of technological problems here today. We run these videos all the time, but today there's something wrong. And it shows me that we should meet in person, Shriyam.
Of course, sir.
Very clearly.
If
I may, just following up from what you just said, that yes, yoga is the art of healthy body and healthy mind. Perhaps we can go a bit further even, because in WHO's active toolkit, we have a number of systems to improve the levels of physical activity. Mm-hmm. One of the action areas is active societies. So, because we need to acknowledge that people are living under different conditions, and for some of us it's easier, if I may, to be physically active, and for some it is more difficult to keep a healthy body and a healthy mind. So where then yoga comes in very clearly. But my question to you is therefore, is there something to move from this individual pursuit which is mostly practiced today, to the next level of societal pursuit, and what can yoga teach us in this regard, which would then be a community-based pursuit. Right. Since yoga is a tool which can be practiced at the societal level as well, we think that yoga fits in perfectly well for trying some pilot programs on this. We also have some initiatives in the UN, such as building healthy cities. Mm-hmm. So how do we design cities so that this, what you're saying, having a healthy body in a healthy mind, can be more easily pursued? So this question over to you, Shriyan.
Yes, doctor. So, so I'll try to answer it as much as I can. Now, one of the reasons why we are physically not active and physically not, weekends we might go and do a little bit of swimming or sport, or fishing, of course, is no exercise, but then, or golf or whatever. But I keep saying golf because I do. So that's not enough. See, technology has developed so much that we need to go to office. Well, we have a car, and we need to go somewhere else. We have the tram, we have the underground. So there is hardly any, and I've seen your buses in Switzerland run by the Swiss Postal Department. They are so luxurious and so beautiful. So who would want to walk? You see that? So I think if we can work on this, every government should work, and people should be made aware, otherwise nobody is going to listen to this, that please, if your office is not more than this many kilometers, walk to your office, please. I mean, it should be presented as a yogic way of keeping your health. I can understand that in some of the cities, if you walk, it's better to go in an air-conditioned car than walk because of the pollution. I can understand that. So now that is the next step. Yoga also appreciates that you have a healthy environment. We have these beautiful mantras which talk about peace in the atmosphere, goodness and peace, which means well-being of trees and herbs. Aushadya Shanti means herbs, well-being of herbs. Vanaspatiya Shanti, grow more trees and look after them. In ancient India, trees were worshipped, and nobody will cut down anything that is worshipped, right? And so on. And this kindness to animals, which of course has a great impact on saving wildlife, because this is also part of our world. We are not just human beings living in this world. We live with all the other creatures around. This holistic view of life can be encouraged only when people are made to think and understand that a yogic way of life is not just doing yogasanas every morning on your terrace. No, it's also a way of the yama niyamas, rules and regulations, talk about simplicity of living, not coveting other people's wealth for no reason whatsoever, and ahimsa, which is not to cause injury to other living beings. This is also the message in the Gita. Sarva bhuta hite rata, welfare of all living beings. Not only us, there are many living beings. We are a vast network of life. So I think this is one thing which we can introduce by making people understand that it's a good thing to walk, and it's not below your dignity to walk. Some people think, oh, I'm walking because I have no car. You may have 10 cars, but walk. Now, these are something which only the WHO can do. We can't do this. We walk, of course. I had a walk of hope which covered 7,500 kilometers from south to the north of India. Many people walked with me, but it was very funny that the moment the walk stopped, everybody was back in their cars. So, you know what I mean? So, not as a token, but as an actual healthy exercise, and avoiding pollution, which again is a very important thing, that we are going electrical now. It's a good step, because then you avoid the pollution in the air. Very good step. I would say going electrical is a yogic step because then you're improving the environment. Without good air, how will you do pranayam? Pranayam is a breathing technique. So we have, and good food. When I say good food, nutritious food. And I'm aware that the WHO, as you said, is working on alcohol against, consumption of too much alcohol and smoking and so on. Smoking, of course, has to be completely avoided to have a healthy society. You cannot breathe and do pranayam in yoga if you smoke. It would only cause more emphysema to the lungs. Okay, as far as alcohol is concerned, we all know its effects. So, yogic life is an alcohol free life, but please, when you say alcohol free life, it is not as if the yogi is not drunk. He finds something inside to drink, which is the bliss and the joy experienced when one does pranayam and deep meditation. So, if this could be introduced, I must tell you this, give me a minute. I come from Kerala, which is in the south. It's a predominantly leftist society. The communist cadres, their only enjoyment is to go after their work into the bar. There's nothing else. So I'm not boasting, but I must admit that I am very much responsible in introducing the practice of yoga to the communist cadres in Kerala so that they do something useful and keep their bodies healthy instead of saturating their bloodstream with alcohol. Right? And I must say that I was recently given a presentation by the communist cadres in Kerala, in North Kerala, where there were 2,000 cadres practicing yoga, meditation, asanas and pranayam. If this can be done there, I recently went to Moscow. Believe me, sir, there are in Moscow itself, there are over 20 places where they teach yoga and meditation, which means people are beginning to note the importance of these matters, and if the WHO is with us, I am sure this can become a global movement, which is not in our hands. We can only provide the inputs and give it a scientific outlook rather than a superstitious, kind of thing, not miracle mongering. I think we should get out of this.
I completely agree with you, Sri M, on this. Now, let me come to a next question, and that's about the healing aspect of yoga.
Yes.
So when you start with yoga, you feel the body ache really about that. You feel for the first part in pursuing yoga. I think many of those who practice yoga have felt this as well. Now, let us talk a little bit about the relationship between wellness and well-being, because very often people confuse this and put this as same, which is not.
True.
And you've so eloquently talked about the different aspects of yoga that go beyond the physical individualistic approach of that, looking at the environment that needs to be there for you to actually practice yoga in a right way. For instance, I think our colleagues who are listening in who work on air pollution, this was music to their ears. My colleagues in the team on alcohol control, that's music to their ears, as well as, of course, our fight against the tobacco industry, which is killing 8 million people every year. So let us come now onto this positive side, looking at the relationship between wellness, my individual wellness that I might feel when practicing yoga, and the well-being part, which is going much beyond that and has the societal aspect as well. Sri, would you like to comment on that?
Let me put it this way. The basic mind principle of yoga. There is physical as well as mind principle. When you go into the mind aspect of yoga, the ethical aspect of yoga also in it. There is an ancient sloka from, I'm sorry I have to say this because it sounds also beautiful to me, at least Sanskrit, which is Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, Sarve santu niramaya, Sarve bhadrani pashyantu, which means may the whole world be happy, may no one suffer from pain, may we as a whole enjoy happiness and see good things. Bhadre karne pashyami, let me see that which is auspicious. Now this is not meant for one individual who is practicing yoga. It's meant as a global and holistic look at human beings as such, all human beings. So well-being, I know your constitution now says, the WHO's constitution, well-being is not just good health. It includes many other factors. One is mind health. Now, mind health today is to be looked into very carefully because we are living in an era where the mind is always, what, there's a word for that, there is a, where you can't fix your attention on one thing for more than half a minute. ADS. Now, look at the media. The media actually encourages ADS because 1 second there's something, another second there's something else. And people say, well, this is called, what they said, fuzzy logic. I said, no, 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 this is not fuzzy logic. I mean, that means trying to do many things at the same time. No, that's what the yogi does actually. This is not that. This is distracting your mind. So there are various ways of bringing about well-being apart from just physical wellness. I am talking about mind well-being, which takes you to the spiritual. We can leave the spiritual for the time being. It may be a little far out to reach out. But anyway, so here I must also say that there was a great yogi, perhaps walking in Jerusalem 1,000 years ago. Well, I think he was a great yogi. And he said something very interesting. He said, lay treasures in your heart where thieves do not break in and steal. New Testament, Matthew. So this treasure is a common treasure for all human beings. Now this is well-being. It's not just how much physically healthy. I know people who are very, very physically healthy. They can lift weights, they do all kinds of exercise, but in the evening, when they sit down after their work, there is no well-being. There is no peace in the mind. So how do you drown the non-peaceful nature of your mind? Whiskey. And then what happens? You know what happens. We don't have to, even doctors know what happened in the end. Next day there is a, you know what, a reaction and so on. So a hangover. So now we are living in a kind of state of hangovers, one after the other. And one way to solve this is to learn ways and means to meditate. And also for the group, not just one person. Those times have gone. We need to now go out onto the street and get people to work together on well-being as a whole. Now, the other aspect of yoga is not merely physical exercise. Yoga also deals with very, very important structures in the body like the vagus nerve, which controls the heartbeat, the lungs. It also deals with the sympathetic nervous system, which controls many of our organs. And through the practice of pranayama, if properly done, you can control all this. You can bring about a state of good health and also a state of well-being, because the ductless glands also have a part to play in the practice of yoga. We know that the master gland is the pituitary, and from there are so many other glands. When I say I am feeling well-being, it means there is a good deal of serotonin flowing in my blood system. And yoga has ways and means to produce this, to increase this factor in us. So these are practical experiments which can be done, and which can be taught in schools and colleges, so that from childhood children pick up the practice of yoga without giving it a denominational aspect. I am very clear on this. Once it gets a denominational aspect, like a religion or this or that, then very few people would even take it up. I say it's a universal science. This is my feeling, my understanding. So, I don't know, I talked enough, sir.
So thank you very much. And I just want to follow up on what you said, and that we have so many inputs, senses all the time, so that you compared it with the ADS, the syndrome, so that people, especially children, can no longer cope with all these inputs all the time. And I follow very much what you're saying on that. This is a disruption. This is a disruption of being able to actually make sense of what we experience during everyday lives. So let me come with this to my next question, which is, do you actually see a difference in behavior, in daily practice, if you do yoga? Does this lead to an improved mindfulness? Do you have the then a different level of consciousness as well? So that would help us perhaps to understand how we need to design our societies so that we can actually experience this better. So the question to you is, what sort of consciousness and mindfulness effects does yoga have in your view?
Yes. So, sir, yoga, while it starts with the rules and regulations, yama niyamas, goes on to asanas, and then on to pranayam, and then from there to what we just now discussed, which is dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. Now, dharana is the capacity of the yogi to hold in complete attention whatever he is doing or she is doing. And dhyana is the continuation of that attention. Now, as far as the change in human mind that the yoga brings, one is it calms down the breath. When it calms down the breath, it calms down the thought process quite a bit. Our problem is our thought process is so agitated, jumping from one tree to another, one branch to another like a monkey. So yoga helps to calm it down. I'll give you an example. The whole science of breathing in yoga has come from the understanding that our emotions are reflected in the rhythm of our breath. For instance, if I am very agitated, my breathing, if you look at ourselves, our breathing becomes quite agitated and irregular. When I'm angry, when I'm, even when I'm I become violent, you'll see that the rhythm pattern of breathing becomes very agitated, irregular. On the other hand, when I'm listening to beautiful music, I forgot to say that to your previous question, one of the things that can help is beautiful music. I'm talking about classical music. It doesn't matter which classical music, from which country. So I personally listen to Beethoven a lot. I mean, so what I'm trying to say is, when you listen to something beautiful, or Mozart or Indian classical music, Bhimsen Joshi, somebody. So when I listen to this, if I look into my breathing pattern, I see that it has slowed down and become very quiet and quite symmetrical. So the yogis, who in ancient times were actually scientists, researchers, they researched on the human system and others were researching on elements. So when they discovered that if your emotions change the rhythm or pattern of your breath, can we work the other way around, which means change the pattern or the rhythm of your breathing to bring about a state of quietness and completeness and a sense of peace and blissfulness. So from there started the whole science of pranayama. Now, if you need a simple demonstration, all one has to do is to sit down quietly for 2 minutes and watch your breath. This is called breath mindfulness. There are other mindfulness also, but breath mindfulness, which means watch your breath quietly. Don't even control it. See, we are never aware of our inhalation exhalation generally, even though it's one of the most important things. When it stops, we're dead. But we never give any attention to it. For a change, if we could give a little bit of attention to our breath as you inhale and exhale, even without any control, within a few minutes, I would say a short time, you'll see that the rhythm has become very quiet and tranquil. From there, it reflects onto the mind. The mind becomes tranquil. And without a tranquil mind, one cannot, according to yoga, go beyond the ordinary mind. Because when the mind becomes calm, it's kind of dehypnotizing itself from the conditioning which has been put into it from childhood. It breaks free of the conditioning and goes to better horizons, which we call, well, consciousness, Atman, whatever we want to call it. These are terms, doesn't matter. So I think this is what happens when you practice yoga, especially pranayam, and the techniques of meditation, which there isn't time for us to go elaborately into this. We can at a future date. But I would say that this is what happens. And when the mind is quiet, it is the runway from which you can take off to the higher horizons. If this can be done in schools and colleges and universities and workplaces, I know that I regularly give talks in the Google headquarters in the United States, in California. And they have now a section for all their employees to sit down, a room to meditate and do their pranayam. It helps in keeping your mind calm. It improves your efficiency because you no longer think, oh, I can't do this. Opens up. So
Thank you so much, Shriyam. Let me come to a slightly different topic now, because in WHO, as you can imagine, there's a lot of competition, if you will, about different medical concepts.
yeah.
Westernized medicine, traditional medicine, complementary medicine, and I would like to come to or to discuss a little bit further with you the level of evidence that we are generating on different interventions, techniques, diagnostics, and so on and so forth. In our way, in the Secretariat, we believe that there is not just the Westernized medicine. There is much more, and of course, yoga is many thousand years old and has proven, because it's evolved, it's lived, that many people feel and see that it is helpful to them. Now, as WHO, we are looking at different levels of evidence. So do you actually think that from the yoga side, you need to now also work on, the evidence, the trials that are usually impacted on that? Or do you see that in looking at the evidence of yoga or some other parts of traditional medicine or homeopathy or complementary medicine, that we need to have a different approach to measuring evidence? Randomized controlled trials might not work for all the interventions in traditional medicine, while there would be perhaps other mechanisms that could be transparently reviewed by others, coming to the same sort of results, which is actually the essence of evidence, at the same time. So the question to you is, how do we bring Westernized medicine more closely together with yoga.
Right. I have this to say. What we have today as allopathy or westernized medicine
Yes.
started at one time, I think, like Ayurveda or anything else, because there was no standardized procedure in those days. And then it proceeded and became standardized, and there were ways and means to measure. And the problem was with that process, while I believe that one sometimes needs allopathic intervention, like if you're really chronically, acutely sick, you need to go to an ICU. Nobody can help us. I understand this, yes. However, what has happened in this process is, since this is a quick way of curing, the what has been forgotten is that most diseases have a certain root in the human system. They come from certain causes. The causes have not been looked into, but the symptoms have been looked into, and treatments have been devised. I fully agree with this. Of course, treatments are necessary, symptoms have to be looked at, fine. But can we go a little deeper into this and incorporate the Ayurvedic way of and yogic way of life into mainstream medicine? I'm not a believer in doing away with mainstream medicine, because it's very important. It has worked, it has shown results. But can we go a little deeper and bring this in so that we look at the roots of the problem and try to solve them rather than just treat the symptoms? This is where I think yoga and Ayurveda would be of great. I don't know much about homeopathy, so I will not comment. But what I know. Now, Ayurveda again is not a system of medicine. People mistake it for a system of medicine. The word Ayu means life. Ayu. And Ayurveda is the science of life. So, in the science of life, there is something called how to live your life, not treat the symptoms. That comes later. How to lead your life, because if an Ayurvedic physician, traditional physician, prescribes a medicine for you, today even that is available on the counter, but in those days it was not possible. They used to make specific things for specific diagnosis. So when he prescribes, if he is really a good physician who is rooted in his tradition, he would tell you that, look, you can take this medicine, but you can't eat such and such a food. You need to sleep at such and such a time. So the way of life is very important to bring about a change in the root cause of the disease, not just the symptoms. So if only we could incorporate this system of learning into mainstream medicine, then the mainstream medicine would remain mainstream. No harm, no problem. But we would rather treat the root than treat the symptoms. Then it becomes also a preventive. One of the great things about Ayurveda, if you follow the way of life prescribed in Ayurveda and yoga, you prevent a lot of diseases. You cure them only when they come, when the symptoms come. But can we not also prevent these things from happening?
Yeah, that's actually exactly what we're trying to do in health promotion. There's on the one hand side, there's our preventative aspects in addressing risk factors.
Yes.
But then there's all these what I would call risk conditions in which people are living. And I think, as you say, some of the aspects would be salutogenetic. So looking at the potential health benefits in turning around, not just looking at how we're treating disease, but also how we are creating better health.
Yes.
And that is in the same vein that you have been alluding to in your response. And I'm just saying that because for many listeners today, it might actually sound quite alien that WHO is actually so interested in traditional medicine, in Ayurveda, in yoga, and many other non-Western treatments. And what we're trying to bring out is exactly what you're saying, that there's root causes to disease, but there's also root causes for health.
Yes.
There are root causes how you can change
Yes.
the societies and your environments, and you've alluded to that in previous answers to my question, that we could create societies and a world where it's easier to actually lead a healthier life. And that has been one of the messages coming from WHO since its creation. Make healthy choices the easier choice. And that is exactly what I appreciate very much in your response, where I think we can come closer together. It's not a one or, as you said, but it is perhaps a one end coming together. Because each of us, I'm so very happy to get to a good functioning ICU if I have an accident, or if I have a disease, right? So we're all happy. It's not to say it's the one or the other. It is that these different streams need to come together.
So may I add one point? Please. I would say, therefore, the stress prevention is better than cure, has to be looked in carefully. And the symbol behind you, which is supposed to be traditional medicine, is actually an ancient symbol which we find in our texts, the Kundalini snake around the spinal cord. Very interesting. I don't know why it came, but anyway. Yes, sir. Shall we proceed?
Yes, thank you very much. Now, as I think I would like to open now the floor to participants, because this needs to be an engagement with those who listen in. And so we want to actually be able to also raise some questions with you as we have the opportunity speaking with you today.
Thank you very much.
Before people perhaps get ready with their questions, could I ask you, what is your vision for the next 10 years? Is there a vision how you want to see the world in 10 years' time?
Sir, my vision is always that we have a healthy world of people with healthy bodies, healthy minds, and people who are open to explore things which without prejudice. I think that's the kind of life we would look for the next. If it happens in 10 years, then the next 25, 30 years is going to be heaven.
Wonderful. Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Thank you.
So those participants listening in to us, you may have some questions. So perhaps we can now open the chat and see what sort of, I understand some questions have already come in. And perhaps I can read out a couple of questions to you that have arrived already in the chat. So the first one is, how can knowledge of yoga theory improve one's quality of practice?
Quality of practice?
Practice.
Of yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I would suggest that it is not a good idea to jump into practice before you have a good idea of what it is going to do to you and what is essentially why you're doing the practice. People jump into the practice without many a time not knowing why they're doing it, because the teacher has asked me to stand on my head. Now, this is, I know it's Sirsasana, one of the asanas. Why do I do it? So it's very important to study the theory first before the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, which are the standard textbook on yoga anywhere in the world, doesn't start with the chapter called practice. It starts with the chapter called Samadhipada, which means where are you going through the practice? What is the aim of your practice? It goes there and then comes to the practice. So I think it is very, very important to learn the theory of yoga before we even start practicing. Well, you can start a few asanas, that's all right, and some deep breathing. But if you need to go deeper, it's good to study the theory of yoga, and I would not recommend any text other than to start with the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali.
Thank you. Let me pose a second question to you. How are energies in yogic sciences like pranas are able to bring about changes in physical body and cause healing effects?
Right. So, yoga believes, I mean, it's not a belief, it's our experience, that,
Yes.
that the human body has the energy which is called prana, which is linked to the breath, which is called shwasa. Now, through the manipulation of your breath, you can control your prana. Most of the diseases, according to yoga, are caused by the imbalance of the Ida and the Pingala. So, we say that there are two energy channels in the system. The left one is the Ida and the right one is the Pingala. There is an imbalance in the life energy or prana flowing through this. And fortunately for us, this imbalance can be put in its proper shape and balanced through your breathing, because the breath is linked to the prana. Breath is not prana, but breath is linked to the prana. Therefore, the first step would be to balance the prana that flows in the Ida and the Pingala. When it is properly balanced, then the body also experiences good health and well-being, also mind. The mind becomes balanced because there is no too much of plus and there is no too much of minus. It's kind of adjusted properly. So, pranayam is very important for this, properly studied, of course. Again, I would say from the first question, study the theory first before going into some kind of a strange practice. We have to do it very carefully. We're dealing with a very sensitive thing.
Yeah. Now I have a real expert question to you. So from somebody who is definitely already a
Yogi.
well-developed yogi. What's the link between vibrations of external activities of body and constant vibrations of bija akarash, or seed sounds seated at the core of body? I honestly, you need to explain to me what that question means. So also for others who are not that far can actually follow you on that.
Sir, doctor, this is a little bit, to answer it would take a lot of time, but I'll try to make it as small as possible. First, the word bija aksharas. Now, akshara is the word used in Sanskrit for the alphabet, letters. And bija, akshara is a beautiful word. It means indestructible, akshara. Now, bija means a seed, S-E-E-D, seed. So, bijakshara means seed sounds. So, in the practice of what is called Nada Yoga, yoga of sound, and also in the practice of a certain school of Tantra. Tantra is not just origins in the cremation grounds, it's much more, it's quite different. That's what is projected as, it's not. Now, in fact, I must tell you that one of the best books on Tantra was written by a retired judge of the Calcutta High Court, who was an Englishman, whose name was a Britisher, whose name was Sir John Woodroffe. Introduction to Tantra by Sir John Woodroffe is a book that everybody should read. I mean, those who are interested in the subject. There also he has discussed the bijaksharas. The bijaksharas means certain sounds which don't have any translated meaning. Like if you say cat, you know what a cat is. But if you say, I am going to use a bijakshara now. Suppose I say Hreem, H-R-E-E-M. If I say Hreem, it has no meaning, but it is a sound, it's a bijakshara, which means these seed sounds are supposed to, awaken certain energies in your system. If especially you use them with your mental faculties fixed on certain centers of the cerebrospinal system. So, you see there are bijaksharas like lam, vam, ram, yam. So, they have no meaning really, but they are sounds. It's the science of sound, so it's called Nada Yoga. And in Tantra it is applied to bring about, stimulate certain parts of our psychic system so that the energy flow is used for a particular purpose. There are destructive Bijaksharas and there are constructive Bijaksharas, both. Well, now if you go deeper into it, it would appear like witchcraft, destructive and so on, but I'm not talking about that.
No, but that's already, I think you made it very clear. And actually, there's other parts of arts, by the way, of singing,
Yes.
that use the same sort of mechanisms. How you actually
sound,
base your voice, for instance.
Yeah, this
So
is
thank
Nada
you
Yoga.
very much. That's at least how I, as not having traveled so far on the yoga journey, would actually interpret what you've just said. Can I give you another question, which I found could be mine, but is not mine, but could have been mine? What is the relation between the levels of understanding and practice of yoga and the multidimensionality of mind?
So now this is also quite a elaborate question. First of all, the practice of yoga, apart from the physical aspect, the inner aspect of yoga, which is the mind aspect, is to bring about a quietness in the mind which is free of distractions. In fact, Patanjali defines yoga as yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, which means yoga is the science of freeing the mind from all distractions. When you say all distractions, it also includes contradictions, tensions, everything, all distractions. When the mind is free of all distractions, when it is quiet, it gathers a lot of energy, because most of the energy of the mind is lost in distractions, in contradictions, in tensions. So a tension-free mind or a contradiction-free mind or a mind with no distractions is full of energy. So it has gone to the root of its source, which is energy, which we call consciousness. I mean, you can call it bodha, you can call it Atman, whatever we want to call it. These are different terms used for the core of consciousness. Now, this core of consciousness, according to Vedanta and yoga, or let's say Yoga Vedanta, is the all-pervading consciousness in the universe. And this small spark of that is in every human being, which is the treasure which I talked about, where thieves do not break in and steal. And to go there, you need to have a single-minded attention and free the mind from all distractions. Single-minded attention is one. The other is also to fix your attention on a single point in the system. Therefore, if somebody says, therefore, if thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light, it has a different meaning according to me. So, therefore, this is what yoga does. It quietens the mind and gives it so much abundant energy, which was usually dissipated in all these contradictions and confusions and distractions. So now you are with an atom bomb. Now, how you use it is up to you.
Very clear. Thank you so much. There's another question, and there's many more questions coming in, colleagues.
How much time do we have, sir?
Exactly. So I was just wondering how much time we've left. It's so exciting talking with you, Shri.
I think we have 15 minutes more. 15?
We have some more 15 minutes. Yeah. That's excellent. Let's use them well.
Sure.
So one more question was there to ask: should yoga be part of all the curricula at school, and what could we do to make that part of all school curricula?
Well, it would be it would be a good idea to do that, to include it in all the curricula. But then for doing that, we need to take it out of this kind of misunderstood idea that it is part of a certain religion. And then universally it's possible to make it part of the curriculum. Because then what happens? They say, oh, this is Hindu, this is Christian, this is Muslim. No. if you can take it out of that context and present it as a scientific experimental practice which brings about well-being and maybe develops your mind to higher levels, then it is possible to introduce it as a curriculum. Now, uh, uh, one of the reasons why I wrote this book, Yoga Also for the Godless, is because there's a young lady who came to me and said, I want to practice yoga, but wherever I go, they want me to chant Sanskrit slokas. I said, but why? She said, this is without this chanting, they will not teach me yoga. So this is why I wrote this book. You can do without that also. You can still learn yoga. So if yoga can be introduced as a practice to bring about physical health, mental well-being, clarity of intelligence, and so on, then it will work. And you need proof for that. So therefore, experimental study is very, very useful. Right now, for the last 1 year, I am doing a course on consciousness and yoga for the IIT, Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. I am on the faculty now. Because there what happens, it goes to the professors who are scientific, who want everything to be put into test tubes or into their labs. And I am saying there are certain things which you can't do that, but you can still find experimental proof. So if this is worked out, basically it's a first class idea. I think it's a wonderful idea to include yoga in the curriculum. You can even change the name and call it something else, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's not the name, it's
Yes.
what you do. How can we measure the benefits of yoga?
Yeah. Now this is interesting. As far as the physical body is concerned, it is very easy to measure the benefits of yoga. I'm sitting before you. I'm 72 years old. I've been practicing yoga from the age of 10. And I don't have any of the usual problems which people have at the age of 72. I may have a cold sometimes, and I went through this COVID uh, period, and taught so many people how to breathe to keep their lungs clear so that even if they are affected, it doesn't become so serious and it works. These are things which can be proved. If you come to Madanapalle, you will have the records for this. It can all be proved. But I also got tested positive once in the midst of all this. But believe me, I had no symptoms. I was careful that it doesn't go to somebody else. So even if you don't have symptoms, you could spread it. So I kept myself in quarantine, but I had no symptoms. I completely attribute this to the practice of yoga from the age of 10 till now. I don't miss a single day as far as possible, unless I have a flu or something, then that's different. So this is one benefit, physical benefit. As far as the mind is concerned, well, I don't think I have become senile yet. I'm 72. And the mind it's very active, but it's very calm. These are the experimental benefits. I based it on myself. I am the guinea pig here. I have no problems, and I think anyone who practices yoga with the proper dietary regulations and so on, of course, can certainly benefit from it.
Yeah, thank you. A completely different question about community classes. How do we ensure that there will be more community classes rather than expensive classes and retreats? So the question of how can we ensure that many people who do not have the financial means to pay for all these retreats can still do the yoga in community classes?
Right. I think that's where technology comes into play. You can have absolutely costless internet sessions. There's no cost out there. It's free. But when you say a retreat, then it has to be organized, the lodging, food, boarding, all these things work out. But I think we should try to keep that also as reasonable as possible, because this is not making money. It's a question of teaching somebody how to improve. While I agree with that, I would say the internet is the best. Of course, internet is full of stuff, sometimes good, sometimes sense, sometimes nonsense, but still, I think internet is a good way to do this, free of cost.
Yes, indeed. And the next question is actually absolutely related to that, because one of the colleagues wants to know, how is an accessible way to get started with the theory of yoga for beginners?
Beginners.
I think you've at least in part already responded. So please, over to you.
No, I can. I would say that you should start reading basic textbooks on yoga. I would also recommend, I'm not advertising, but I have done a lot of work on primary yoga, preliminary yoga. So if you go to YouTube and just key in Shri M, you will find a lot of courses on preliminary yogic practices, how to start, where to go, and believe me, it is absolutely free, you don't pay. But the first textbooks I would suggest that people read is, one is a small little text called Raja Yoga by Swami Vivekananda. It's an interesting text. It is a series of lectures he gave in the United States. There's a church which is called Universal Church or something, Unitary Church, and I would think that would be a good start. It's called Raja Yoga by Swami Vivekananda. Apart from that, I would suggest go into the YouTube and check on Shri M and find preliminary yoga, how to start the practice, and it's absolutely free.
Thank you. There is one question actually which is more towards WHO, so I will read it out. First of all, will WHO now work towards introducing yoga as a compulsory subject in school around the world? So this question, I guess, is more to myself. But,
Doctor, I don't believe in compulsion.
I can answer this, of course, because while we have, we give advice to member states. Usually it's the ministries of health, but increasingly it's also other ministries, like education, environment, social protection, finance, and others. So WHO is working with the ministries in the countries, and we do actually have a big undertaking which works with how we make schools more health promoting. Mm-hmm. So how can we establish a network of health promoting schools? That's what we have with thousands of schools around the world. These schools look at also the curricula. So it's not just to use schools for having, the children and teach them, give them a health education, so what they should do, but also how do we create the environment that keeps people healthy and actually promote their health, to make schools a healthy place to live in, not only for the students, but also for the teachers, for those people working in the schools, the parents, and their role in the community. And in those networks, we do work on how we actually create this cellular-genetic aspects that create health rather than disease. And many schools, to our knowledge, actually promote a lot of disease. So how do we actually change that so that schools actually promote health? And that's what WHO is doing in its health promotion work. And obviously, there are, to look at techniques like yoga and many other meditation techniques that you find around the world, depending on where you are, is quite important, is something that we are doing. However, it is up to the school, it is up to the teachers, the parents, the students to pick it up. Right? And of course, it's the ministries that then can or cannot promote this sort of health promotion, cellular genetic aspects. So I just wanted to make sure what the role of WHO is in this. It is not, we do not have a regulatory function. We cannot instruct ministries of education around the world to now do this, but we are collecting the experiences around the world in introducing such measures in the settings, what we call the settings of everyday life. That's what we do at WHO.
Wonderful.
But Sri, would you like to comment on that?
No,
we should give advice to us. Is this the right way? Would you do something different?
You're right. You're right. What you said is, I absolutely agree with you. I don't like the word compulsion. So this compulsory doesn't get into my mind. But what you said is right. If they are interested, or you can make them interested, and then it is up to the administration, the parents and the students. What we can do is give them an understanding of how beneficial it is. This much we can do. And you can do it better than I can do it, because I sit in one corner of the world. You're WHO, the World Health Organization, sir.
Yes.
So,
there's one comment from that I don't want to hide. One comment from one of the participants to say that in ancient times yoga was called integration. That's an interesting comment. I didn't know that.
Well,
what do you say?
Yoga comes from the root yuj, which means to bring together. So maybe he's right. So yuj means to bring together. So probably from that he found the word integrate. So in fact, one of the ancient Vedic texts sing about this, saying, Sangachatvam, let us come together, integrate. Samvo manam sijanatam, with our minds integrated may we understand. Now this is the motto of our schools which we run. With our minds put together may we understand. It's beautiful. Samvo manam sijanatam, with our minds put together. This is from the Rig Veda, at least 1,000 years old, conservative estimates. So perhaps he's right, integrate.
So thank you so much, Sri M. We are extremely privileged in WHO, in the Secretariat, but I think also those people who listened in today to have had the chance of discussing, elaborating a little bit upon yoga and its role for us individually, but also in societies, how we can bring yoga a bit to the fore, how we balance the forces, the spirits in this regard. I inhaled and exhaled a lot in this. So thank you very much, Sri M, for sharing and donating some of your precious time today. So thank you very much for today, and all the best to you.
Thanks a lot. Namaskar.
Namaste.
Namaste.